So, the story I'm going to read for you today is from the biography of a formerly enslaved woman named Jamie Parker, written by Emily Catharine Pierson. And she tells the story of a man named Jupe who had a conflict with the overseer Turk. And a little background on Turk. Turk was a notoriously violent overseer, but he was beloved in the white community for being jovial and happy. Right? And so this is what happened when Jupe and Turk had an altercation. It was not uncommon for scenes of blood to transpire on the Redfield estate. Turk, the overseer, was unmerciful. His principle of government was, for the slightest offense, to whip until he was tired, and then, by way of refining his cruelty, order some poor slave to go on with the dreadful work. And if he abated in the least before he had leave, there were Turk's fearful oaths and threats to urge him on. Turk was not permitted to continue long in his administration. The measure of his iniquities was soon full, and he went to his reward. One morning the overseer whipped a lad till he died. The same day, the people being at work gathering corn, those that had been drilled, of whom one was Jamie, were in the same row with the foreman, and others not so available, were loitering in the rear when Turk rode up to them on his boasted steed, Wildfire, and passing by those that were doing well, came to the listless ones. Seeing him dismount, as he approached, they tried to do a little better. Nevertheless, he gave them each a cruel blow, as usual. But who is that loitering by himself at the extremity of the field, whose task is scarcely yet begun? Who? Why, that is Jupe, the Southampton Giant. But why he seems so inert and useless? One would think, with such a frame and muscles, he might gather the cornfield, nor think of fatigue. There are reasons sufficient why he is so cast down. He has a strong arm, but a stronger heart, and has been the only solace of his widowed mother, whose husband was one of the leaders of the famous Southampton massacre, who was hung. The life of the mother was henceforth bound up in the life of the child, and faithfully they toiled for their master until the dreadful moment when Jupe was sold. He had become a giant in stature, was about 20 years old, and from his many excellencies commanded a high price. His master, getting pressed for money, found the temptation of $1,500 too good of an offer to be resisted in exchange for his favorite slave, and accordingly sold him to the master of the Redfield estate. "Why don't you work, you rascal?" shouted Turk, going up to him, leading Wildfire, and swinging his official weapon. Jupe looked down on his little tormentor with the greatest apparent coolness and unconcern. This was too much to be borne. Turk could not be looked down on thus, so to put himself on an equally as to height, he mounted his horse. "Now we shall see who's head man," said he. "Work, work, work," continued he, at the same time giving the slave repeated blows. The giant looked up to heaven, as if to pray for vengeance. His usually stolid expression of countenance changed, and gave indications that strong passions were working within. But with a mighty effort, he did not speak. "Do your work, will you?" shouted the overseer, still lashing him mercilessly. The memory of the morning's cruel scene at the whipping post, which resulted in death, the long train of bloody deeds and the wrongs of his race, rushed upon him. "Yes," said he, the whole of his mighty spirit rising. "Yes, I'll do my work." And with one powerful swing of his sickle, he felled the overseer lifeless to the earth. He was not long in mounting the horse thus left without a rider, and galloped away at the top of his speed. Whither? Was it to entrench himself in the fastness of the forest? No, his heart was on his lonely mother's distant cot, and thither he would flee and secrete himself in her neighborhood, so that he might comfort her still. As fast as Wildfire would carry him, he fled, taking the county road that led through the courthouse village in the direction south. He had little hope that he should be able to get through this hamlet without being apprehended, but it seemed the only course he could pursue, and in the desperation of the moment, he determined to try the experiment. It was the hour of opening the mail, and a little crowd were around the post office when the horse and rider described came in sight. "Wildfire, as I live!" exclaimed Black Brownson. "Bless me," said Webster Webb, "Turk's wildfire." "And Jupe the Giant," continued another. "Foul play, you may take my word for it," said another. "Stop him! Stop him!" shouted they all, while everything that could be mustered attempted to head the furious wildfire. Now it was that Jupe himself showed a giant. With one hand he swept the crowd away each side of him, and with the other urged on his horse. On dashed Wildfire, trampling the crowd, and prospects were fair for the slave's escape when 3 pistol balls lodging in his body at many different instants rendered him utterly helpless. The horse was ruined by receiving one of the balls designed for the giant. The courthouse people raised a shout and captured Jupe as they would a wild beast, and caged him up in the jail till his master could be consulted. They little imagined what he had done, that he had killed their jovial, fun-loving Turk, for such was the character which he sustained at the courthouse. His cruelty on the plantation was not heeded there. Oh no, for who was there to testify? Who of all the helpless beings under his sway would dare lisp a syllable of his hard-headed deeds?